Hello, everybody. This is Jane DeMarinis, Executive Director of Climate Diet. And today we are doing our podcast, Climate and Cuisine, with Jonah Goldman. Jonah is co-founder and director of marketing for PLNT Burger, and one of my very favorite places to go. I love PLNT Burger. So Jonah, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jane. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we know each other from being involved in vegan affairs around the DMV a lot, but maybe you could just tell our listeners and viewers where your locations are. I know you have 13 locations, and I've been to a few of them in the DMV, but I think you're New York, Boston, East Coast, but could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have 7 locations in the DMV, so 2 that are inside DC, 2 in Virginia, 3 in Maryland, and our flagship first ever location is in Silver Spring. So it's inside the Whole Foods. We have a partnership with Whole Foods, so all of those DMV locations can be found inside Whole Foods in the prepared food section. We have 2 locations that are in West Philly, and 1 location that's a brick and mortar in New York City, and 3 locations in the greater Boston market. So one of which is a brick and mortar in the Coolidge Corner neighborhood.
So I go to the one in Rockville, so that's our fave.
Great.
So could you talk a little bit about what the impetus was? I understand it because I'm a 24-year vegan. What was your impetus in founding a vegan plant fat kind of fast food chain?
Yeah, it was really a combination of different factors and inspiration from different sides. But back in 2019, the founding group, which consists of, the mission-driven and I would say environmentally and socially focused entrepreneurs, and chefs that are extremely talented. So Chef Spike Mendelsohn had tried some of these incredible plant-based alternatives to meat for the first time. And this was really when the plant-based meat space was exploding. And he was so inspired by the flavor, texture, and nutritional benefits of plant-based meat that he was compelled to create this business plan for a fast food joint that serves burgers, fries, shakes without the animal products, and instead uses plant-based proteins. And so we all worked together on this business plan. We pitched this concept to Whole Foods, and they were convinced that the idea of chef-crafted, planet-friendly fast food was something that consumers, especially their consumers, would align with and crave. And it didn't hurt, I would say, that we had a tasting at the same time we were doing our business pitch. And when they tasted the cheeseburgers and the fries, it was just, they were blown away. And Chef Spike is really able to add the culinary expertise to our menu and create burgers that caramelize and taste just the same, if not better, than their animal-based counterparts. So that was really the inspiration and the impetus to create Plant Burger.
Yeah, it's delicious. They're delicious. And I love the chicken sandwiches too. Really yummy.
I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, we often say, we seek to make it an upgrade rather than a sacrifice to choose plant-based. And our motto, "Eat the change you wish to see in the world," kind of speaks to that this choice, our dietary choices, represent the majority of our carbon footprint. It also obviously is going to be the determinant of how we're feeling and what we're putting in our bodies. And I think people have the misperception that you have to sacrifice something in order to align your values with your dietary choices. And we're here to say it has never been easier or more delicious to embrace those changes and to include these foods in your diet.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think part of being a vegan that's so terrific now and maybe different than when I first became one is the private sector. You entrepreneurs are making it so delicious and easy to be one, and that you don't have to bring your lunch when you're going someplace to be able to, to get a vegan meal. We need more of you, of course, across this country.
Mhm.
But it's the entrepreneur that's also, I think, spreading the word quite a bit, even though groups like mine are trying to do it. When people see ads or signs or see you in the Whole Foods, it's, wonderful to get that exposure for what is so good for the planet, so good for your own health, and delicious. So thank you for the work that you do. Why don't we talk a little bit about when you became vegan? Because I think you became a vegan at the age of 10. So I'd love to know a little bit more about that. It's so young.
Yeah. So I became, I should say I became vegetarian back at the age of 10, but it was not until 2019 that after watching Game Changers, my brother Ellie actually was the one who suggested we should just go full vegan because all we have is, cheese and eggs in our diet, and we could pretty easily cut that out. But I think what led up to that is a very interesting story, and it involves me convincing my brothers and my parents to stop eating dead animals. And it really all started during a trip to Poplar Spring Animal Sanctuary. Around the time I was 10, we had this incredible experience, very immersive. If you've ever been to Poplar Spring Animal Sanctuary, it's just one of those places that just so full of love, and it's a reflection of compassion. So we give the animals compassion, the animals give it right back to us. And so I'd never really interacted with animals that way before, but the goats, the pigs, the roosters, like they come up to you and they want affection and they want to show you affection. And so we very quickly became friends with a number of animals, and one rooster in particular, George, had just so much character. He was strutting around and he had all these relationships with all the other animals, and we became friends this day. And then we went for dinner after our trip to the animal sanctuary. We went to a Peruvian chicken place, El Pollo Rico, and I asked my dad, what is the difference between these chickens that are turning around on these skewers and George, who we just love and we would never want to harm? And he didn't have really too much of an answer for me, and that made me really curious to learn about where food comes from, where do our meat products come from. And that was actually the first time that I connected the dots, that meat comes from animals. And it was something that, I think I had taken for granted. Oh, meat, that's one thing and animals are another thing, because we love animals, or we profess to love animals, yet we, are complicit in this system that harms animals. And so that cognitive dissonance really stood out to me as a way in which our society is dysfunctional and a little bit hypocritical, or very hypocritical. And so I started to learn at a very young age about factory farming and what the meat industry is in America, which is basically a monopoly on our protein source, and incredibly harmful for humans and animals, and exploitive of the people who work in the food
Yeah.
system. So after
Especially the processing plants, really horrible records of people being maimed,
yes,
people undocumented who don't want to report it because they're afraid of ICE coming after them. But yeah, I'm totally in
yeah,
agreement about how they're treating employees.
it's a huge issue. Often is said that where animals suffer, humans suffer, and this is really a case where that holds true. And so later in life, I actually put myself on the line of processing plants, and I worked on farms to
Oh,
really
interesting.
understand firsthand, like, what is happening and who are the people who are working there. And it's just as you say, the most marginalized, vulnerable communities are the ones who are put in these positions, which are dangerous and have high rates of workplace injuries and trauma, and again are being mistreated because they know that the company could call ICE on them, and they would face deportation. So they're deprived of their workers' rights because they're questionable immigration status. But Yeah, I became passionate about really understanding food systems and the vulnerabilities of our current food system. And that was really what led me to a plant-based diet at the young age of 10. And from that point, uh, I made myself a nuisance to my family until they all joined me in a plant-based diet. And so that once they all were vegetarians like me, we had a much easier time of getting great meals together, and we were all very happy with the choice from a health and from an ethical perspective.
That's a wonderful story. I don't know if you've heard of a new book that's out there by a Forbes reporter, Chloe Servino, called Raw Deal. And it's about uh, just the horrible conditions and the greed and profits being made in the meat industry, and some of the terrible stories about how employees are treated. But it's called Raw Deal. I think it has a little bit more to the name, corporate greed and something else in the meat industry.
Yeah, I'd be that sounds really interesting. And one of the first books I read on this subject was The Jungle. And what's crazy about The Jungle is things have not gotten better. If anything, they've gotten bigger and worse. And oversight of these factory farms is abysmal. The conditions under which these
Yes.
animals are raised is awful, and disease is rampant. And because of the scale, disease is now able to spread in a much more quick and dangerous way. And so, rather than fixing the problems that we're supposed to be exposed through that book, it's really festered and gotten to a point where, I think this is a massive threat to our food security and to our national security.
Yeah, I agree with you. And talking about the injuries, Penn State has done some research. I went to Penn State. That's my home state. And they're a land grant college, so they have, I think, a big agriculture department, I believe. Anyway, they did this study on injuries in farming and in the meat processing industry, just showing first of all, how understated the data is from the federal government, because the federal government sends out surveys and people respond in whatever way they want to. Penn State went to emergency rooms all across the country and asked them to report injuries this in this industry, the meat industry and the farming industry, and it's exponentially larger than any data that the U.S. government has put together. But I was going to say, during COVID, just another sign of how the meat industry operates. During COVID, when people were losing their jobs, the meat industry ratcheted up prices when people were out of jobs and made record profits, and was also convicted. I don't know if convicted is the right word, but anyway, sanctioned and fined by the federal government during Biden's administration for price fixing.
Yeah.
And they made record profits when, at a time when people were so tight on money, and again, many people were out of work during COVID. It just boggles your mind, really.
Yeah, and it's it's a racket. There's really, like I said, like the monopoly on the meat industry is devastating for smaller farmers and people who want to raise animals responsibly as well. Over 80% of meat in America comes from 4 companies. And so they are able to fix prices. They have such a stranglehold on the supply that they can kind of do what they want. And that also is an awful facet of our modern food system.
And of course, the impact on the climate. And one of those companies, I think, is JBS, which I think originates out of Brazil. They're just cutting down the rainforest at a unbelievable rate. I forget, it's like 23 acres every day are cut down, I believe. It's something massive. It's probably bigger than that. But of course, that impact on the climate is horrible.
No, the meat industry is the leading cause of deforestation. And when you consider the vast quantity of acreage that is needed to grow crops to feed livestock, it's a clear equation, right? There's just way too much land. Over 73% of our agricultural land is dedicated to growing feed instead of growing food. So, and that feed could very easily be food if we had a more plant-based diet, and then we could return so much of the land that's currently in agricultural use to be reforested or to be returned to indigenous people. There's so many positive outcomes, cascading benefits that would be realized if we were to transition just a small amount of our current protein source from animals to plants.
I'm glad you brought that up because, and I'll just add to it. So it's overall 80% of all agricultural land is going to animal agriculture or the food for the animals, which is part of animal agriculture, but it's only producing 20% of the food that's needed globally. So it's hugely inefficient, just as you point out. It's just hugely inefficient, and it's not a future for the globe, for the planet to be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that equation of like calories in to calories out is really shocking for a lot of people to see for the first time. But for our burgers, for example, so we're serving this patty. It's a Beyond Meat base, and we have seasonings and chef crafted flavors that we add to really make it amazing. But this patty, a quarter-pound beef patty compared to an animal beef patty requires 99% less water, 93% less land, generates 90% fewer greenhouse gas emissions compared to beef. And again, it's because we have this incredibly inefficient way of growing a ton of plant calories, feeding it into an animal that reduces it from 100 to 1 calories in a good scenario. And then as I've seen like firsthand in the processing plants, the vast majority of the volume of the body of a cow or any animal is being wasted. We're only eating a small amount of their consumable flesh. And so there's so much waste that's going on. Fluids and intestines that we're not eating. And so that, in addition to the fecal matter and the waste that comes out of these plants, creates all sorts of environmental problems, pollution for groundwater, for the air, and
Methane is, yes, but
so
it's a huge source of methane pollution in the world, and also the methane from their waste products. Besides, they belch it out.
yeah. And not only, I mean, so that's one issue. And then the meat becomes tainted in different ways, from antibiotics to growth hormones to all sorts of other things that could wind up in the final processed meat product. But in contrast to that, our plant-based patty was a plant, and it grew, and it was harvested, and then it was heated and cooled and maybe extruded, which means, given texture and shape. And here it is. It's the most direct path from growing and production to consumption. And I always share that equation of like 100 calories is reduced to 1, whereas we take 100 calories and we have 100 calories of plants. And so it's so much more efficient. We're saving resources, and it's protecting the global commons and the ecology that we need to celebrate and preserve.
And it's so much better for our own health. So
Yeah.
I know we're just a little bit over a week past Father's Day, and I know that you're a new dad, and I've seen photos of your little Rose, and so I know it's a glorious time for you and your family to have Rose. What message do you think you'll be? I know she's too young to start messaging her, but when it's time, what do you think how will you approach her about veganism and what you do for a living?
Wow, that's a great question, Jane. And I want her, I think she naturally, instinctually is very compassionate and empathetic. And it's just beautiful to see her blossoming, and she's almost 10 months old now. So just seeing like the daily changes is really an incredible experience, and so grateful for her. And she teaches me a lot as well. But I think that compassion comes naturally. You know, it's often said if you uh, give a baby a bunny rabbit or and a carrot or and you know, some piece of broccoli, they will pet and play with the animal. They're instinctually compassionate and they'll eat the vegetable. And so I believe you know, I think every human is endowed with innate compassion, and it's just a matter of realizing that and manifesting it through our choices and through empowering ourselves with knowledge. And so that I think will be the responsibility that I have with her mother and with my wife, is to help her to understand, you know, the world in which we live, the systems, the impacts that our choices have, and empowering her to understand, you know, you can make still the right choice that is in alignment with your values, through connecting to the food system, connecting to animals, and learning about more compassionate ways than the rest of our society, or the majority of our society has currently been, you know, feeding themselves. And I think the one other way that I want to help her to conceptualize this is through understanding ecology and economy, which we often view as two different things. But in order for us to have a sustainable, functional planet, we need to combine them. We need to have an ecological economy. And so through explaining to her the definitions of those words and ways that we can actually implement ecological economics, I want her to sort of see the world. And the beauty of it is, you know, they're really the same. Ecology comes from oikos, eco, and logia. So it is oikos means dwelling or house and environment, and logia is the understanding and the study of. So ecology means the study of the house, the study of the dwelling. And economy comes from the same eco, oikos, the dwelling, the house, and nomia, the norms, the practices of the house. And so you can't practice the norms of the environment without understanding the environment. And I think the ecological problems of the climate crisis that we see today is a result of an economy that didn't function in cooperation with ecology. But through understanding ecology and through celebrating ecology, we can grow foods and build a civilization that doesn't harm the environment, but rather is integrated within the greater environment and nature. And that message of oneness is something that I want her to have. And I think for the next generation, the values that I want to pass on to them are hope, resilience, and oneness, to understand the oneness of humanity and animals and our existence on this planet. We're really all one, and we create arbitrary distinctions and differences between one another, whether it's people forming groups or discriminating based on the basis of species, or viewing environment as separate from us and thinking we can harm the environment and not harm ourselves. No, we're all connected. We're all one, and I want her to have that.
Well, those are wonderful messages. Those are wonderful messages. I would just like to mention that my daughters are the ones, one of my two vegan daughters. I have three daughters, so 2 out of 3 is good. We're still working on that third one. But my daughter suggested we become vegan and gave us the book, The China Study, which we read and immediately became, well, we were vegetarian first and then transitioned to veganism. But I think it's great when you can share that with your children, and your children are looking out for you as well, because one of us had some health issues, and veganism is a treatment, certainly, that is very, very valuable for your health. And I'm not sure everybody knows that. There aren't enough, I think, vegan doctors. Thank God for Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and the work they do, and all the vegan, you know, nutritional counselors out there. So are there any last things that you'd like to add or say to our audience? I hope you'll tell us a little bit about your expansion plans so we get more and more people across the country getting the chance to eat your delicious plant-based food. Do you want to share anything there, even if it's not the locations, because I'm sure that takes quite a while to establish those and get permits and whatever.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, Jane. You're an amazing host and amazing voice for the planet and for the animals. So, first of all, just
Thank
want
you.
to again say thank you so much for everything you do and for having me on to share my my story and some ideas and yeah, I'll sort of tease out some exciting new developments that are in the pipeline for us at Planet Burger or Plant Burger. One of which is, yeah, we're looking forward to opening another location before the end of the year, and that will be also in our market, but in a new state. So vague enough that hopefully people in the New Jersey area can get excited. And there's another really exciting development that I'm not at liberty to say too much about right now, but we are doing some innovation at Plant Burger and on the culinary side to expand the offerings that we're able to feed people. So we're currently in this space of providing, compassionate comfort food, plant-based burgers, fries, shakes, chicken sandwiches. And we've identified an opportunity to serve even more meals and have an even bigger impact through expanding the kinds of cuisines that we offer through our currently existing kitchens. So stay tuned for a big announcement regarding the expansion of our menus.
Well, that's great. And I would like to end this by thanking you, not for just being our guest and for the work that you do, but for also supplying those coupons for free plant burgers that we passed out at the Montgomery County Youth Climate Summit. People loved them, and we made them do a little quiz, but everybody on the environment and on essentially the meat industry. So we had, I think, more than 100 people, students, got a free certificate, and then we're using them this Sunday at Planet Maryland. So we'll be passing, I still have some left, and we used them at a school at Rock Creek Forest Elementary. They had a STEM night, STEAM night, and Julius West also had a separate STEAM night, and we participated in that and passed them there. So we've been passing them out all around, and just appreciated. People were so happy the students were so happy to get them, and they all knew about Plant Burger. That was also reassuring that your message is getting out there and they're aware of the good food that you're offering.
Thank you so
Plant
much. And
Burgers
yeah,
are
thank you
offering.
for distributing those. We're always happy to supply those coupons, especially for students, because it increases trial. And that is the most potent tool at our disposal, is to increase trial. And once people try the food with an open mind, we're confident they'll join us in our decision to make conscious choices.
Well, thank you so much, Jonah, for being a part of this again, and we look forward to having you back another time. And thank you all for listening to us. This is Climate and Cuisine signing off. We appreciate Jonah Goldman, co-founder and director of marketing for Plant Burger.
Thank you, Jane.